Hello and welcome on this July 22nd to ALN Thursdays at 4. I am Nick Kanoki, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am joined today by Jim Dieter, CEO, and Ron Regalado should be joining us any moment. Before we get the program underway, I would just like to thank our patron sponsors for the Asset Leadership Network. That is ABS Quality Evaluations, an ABS group, and Onuma System. And we are really grateful for the support of these patron sponsors and our other organizational members. We have Lifecycle Engineering and University Health, Uberlytics, Grant Thornton, the Andrew James Advisory Group, AIM for AMS, Asset Management Lab, Mentor APM, My Property ID Registry, and Strategies Insight. Again, thanks to all these organizations for making this program and other programs possible. And now I'd just like to mention that next Thursday at 4, we have Shelley Culbertson from the RAND Corporation. And yeah, just join in if you'd like to hear from Shelley, or if you just always are attending these Thursday at 4 programs. We would love to hear from you and see you. And with that, I would just, one final note, if you're out there watching, we would love to hear from you. So please share any comments, questions, or feedback for the program or the material we're going over, or especially for Ron. Yeah, share any of that in the chat or the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar, and we will do our best to get those questions or feedback answered. And now, Jim Dieter.
Hey, well, thanks, Nick. I just talked to Ron a couple minutes ago, and he was on his way back from the hospital, I think, taking someone to the hospital. So he'll be joining us in a couple minutes. So I'll save my introduction for Ron for a moment and take a couple minutes opportunity here to talk to Nick, especially about some work that the ALN is doing around equity, and some research in an email he just sent out this morning that I found very interesting. What was that about, Nick?
Thanks for asking, Jim. Glad you read the email I sent you. That's very, validating to hear. I sent this email to the ALN Advancing Equity with Asset Leadership Committee. It's a committee I'm proud to be a part of. And the email subject was about a recent webinar that one of our senior fellows, Arthur Kurland, mentioned and told us that maybe we could promote. So I promoted this webinar called Leveraging Diversity to Accelerate Our Nation's Clean Energy Priorities was the name of the webinar. And it sounded very interesting, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to attend. In fact, it occurred earlier today and may still be going on. But I did some research anyway into one of the companies, Blue Wave Solar, and they had an anti-racist action plan publicly available on their website that I thought was really cool and powerful. And the more I looked into it, the more I found that many companies, municipalities, and even some countries like Canada and Ukraine have a publicly available anti-racist action plan. So the email I sent to you, Jim, as you know, is just a bit of my kind of the most powerful parts of the Blue Wave Solar anti-racist action plan, and or some of my favorite parts maybe, and then links to other resources of other various universities, cities, countries that have anti-racist plans. And I sent that just so that we could all be aware that this is a thing that a lot of good organizations have, and it's important. And there's really substantive, things you can actually implement in your organization or city or whatever. And there's great models out there that are publicly available, and I'm sure they would be happy for you to use in your organization.
Yeah, I looked at the list of cities and municipalities, and I was pleased to find Fairfax County, Virginia, where I live, at the top of the list. I don't know what order the list was in, but they were at the top of it. And we elected a new county board last year, and they have been exceeded my expectations in terms of the things that they have been working on. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I was mentioning to Nick that I had done this morning myself. I've been doing some research on the 6 capitals for the ISO effort. We've been talking about whether value, what value means in terms of the ISO 55000. And there's some people that think it should be the accounting definition of asset. And, it's really just about benefit to the organization and strictly, to follow the traditional accounting view. And the 6 capitals sort of takes the triple bottom line and fleshes it out. There's a lot of words about report, what's for reporting and what's for this and what's for that, but the concepts are really interesting, and it encompasses assets in a broad way, like is encompassed in the ASTM E53 standard that is hopefully going to be published as an ASTM standard in the next month or so, that talks about natural resources, air, land, water, even space as being assets, and systems and other types of intangible property as being assets. And they sort of cover those in a different way. Looks like Ron may be ready to join us, probably out of breath, but I think we need to find some more ways in the future to talk about this equity and social responsibility and anti-racism and how they're connected together. I think it's important, and it's a real opportunity for ISO 55000 to move forward. Well, Ron, I see that you have joined. You have your camera up? He has his camera on, and there he is.
Oh, Jim, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Well,
I apologize for being a little late. I had a medical emergency here at home, and luckily I made it back in time.
Wow, I hope everything's okay with the emergency. Did you get that taken care of? I hope.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us today. We're having an interesting discussion about 6 capitals and equity and anti-racism while we were waiting for you. So thanks to Nick and Mike for supporting that, and had some other comments from Cecilia and other ones. So let me say that Ron and I go way back. When I joined Northrop Grumman many years ago, before the turn of the millennium, or no, it was just after the turn of the millennium, I think, yeah, 2001 or 2002. The organization was divided up into sectors. And I was the property or asset management guy for one sector, and Ron was the lead for one of the other sectors. And he took the initiative to get us all together and to organize a board or a council from across Northrop Grumman that ended up being highly influential. So that was my introduction to Ron, and I came to know Ron as a force of nature. But Ron, so tell us where you're calling from today.
Well, I had planned to call from my deck out in the backyard. I have like 50 oak trees back there. I'm in Texas, and my pool. I was going to do that, but I never made it with the emergency. So right now I'm actually in the chair where I watch TV from in my bedroom. So
okay.
See back there my probably a picture on the wall on the headboard there, but it's my reading area.
Yeah, well, Zoom has given us the insight into the decorative tastes of people from all over the world in meetings. Probably the only time they've ever taken anyone into their bedroom so they could have quiet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, Ron, we start off with a an origin story question, so how'd you get into asset management? And, kind of how did that, what's a short version? I know there's a way long version of that, but
Yeah,
what's maybe a short version
I allowed
of
myself
your
five,
arc?
yeah, 5 minutes for that because normally well, my resume was 18 pages. It was really hard to get down a page and a half. But basically, I was in college and I needed a job while I was going to school, work my way through school, and I was working for DeKalb, Los Angeles, which was part of DLA back then, and I
Okay,
was
DCASR and DLA, what do those stand for?
Defense Contract Management Area, Defense Contract Administrative Services Region. That's DeKalb. That was It was 9 regions in the United States,
Okay.
and LA was one of them.
Yeah.
So I worked for them in the computer room while I was going to college, and I was doing that. Then when I got my degree, they said, "Well, you can apply for other jobs over here." So I ended up applying, and I got several offers but I went with property,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I started. And it was a long time. I worked for DLA, that organization.
Okay, DLA is what? Defense
Logistics Agency.
There you go. Good.
The DeKalb was part of DLA, which is as you know. So I worked there, worked my way up. I did several audits at that time for the government at some big contractor facilities. One of them was Rockwell International, where they built the space shuttle, and others. But I had some friends that knew me from the government that went to work for Rockwell at B1, at the B1 division. And they were internal auditors, and they said, "Well, we need to hire Ron," So they end up offering me a lot more money to do the same thing I was doing. So I went to industry, 5 years in industry, and that's when you met me. Within 5 years. But I worked for Rockwell International, the B1 division, the space shuttle program. I did that on the government side and on the contractor side.
Nice.
So then from there, I got in those days there was headhunters. So a headhunter called me from Northrop and said, "Hey, we're in a lot of trouble over here. We need a guy like you. Can you come and interview at Northrop?" And I said, "Not really. I'm not interested." He goes, "Look, I'll give you back then he says, "I'll give you $1,000. I'll mail you a check. I guarantee you'll get it if you interview." So I did. And I was a supervisor at Rockwell at that time. So Northrop, before I left there, they handed me an offer of almost 19% increase in salary, non-supervisory, going from the space shuttle program to Northrop, because their system had been withdrawn. There weren't a lot of, and also Rockwell B1 system was withdrawn. So I had been through that process of working on the company side to get reapproval. So I kind of, that's how my career launched, was really as an auditor. That's my area of expertise, but and that helped me in management as well. So I worked for Northrop. My last 3 years was at the corporate office out of Texas for the Process Excellence Group, and I was involved with knowledge management, corporate knowledge management council, and of course the property councils, which you and I were on. So I started the Aerospace Sector Council, which was very effective. And then somebody at corporate asked me to do a corporate council. Would I be willing to do that? And of course the answer was yes. That's where we met. So I tried to make it 5 minutes. That's my industry side and government side. Right now I work for DoD, Defense Contract Management Agency, as a plant clearance officer, and I've been doing that for 11 years. So I've got 11 years with Defense Contract Management Agency, but I had previously 7 years with DL, and I also worked for the Navy for a short period of time. So I'm on going on year 18 with DOD.
Oh,
25 years with industry, 18 years. So what's that? 43 in generally the same area of government and company property accountability. And also for 6 years, I did I hired the staff to do the depreciation transactional process and the fixed asset accounting side, which was a nice fit with the company accountability. So the financial side, and then Sarbanes-Oxley came across in 2002. So I helped write I wrote the documentation for the internal audit process of the assets to mitigate any risk as far as assets went, which at that time, the corporation had 20 billion in assets. So it was a big deal. And I would sign off every month, the financial statement, every quarter, and the year end in those years for the fixed assets. So
oh, that's a lot.
yeah, it was back then. It was a nice assignment. Very good.
So, we talking about that council. What was the goal and what was the benefit? What was the outcome, do you think, of that effort from a corporate perspective? Why would other people be interested in doing something like that?
Well, the thing about councils, and really they're a community of practice. Also, we call them councils. We call them councils, but they can be called anything. But it's really just a community of people that have the same goals in mind as far as what they're doing for the company. And as far as a benefit, I would say you get the information to the people that need the information to do their jobs. And as knowledge is captured as soon as it happens, like a best practice and so on, and then it's shared. It's shared to the people that need it when they need it. So in general, it's knowledge management. That's the benefit.
Nice.
And one of the key aspects of knowledge management, believe it or not, is storytelling. Storytelling is imparting information through a story, a real life story, like what you're doing, Jim. You're doing that right now.
Mhm.
And instead of imparting explicit knowledge and explaining it like in a class
Mhm.
and bore people half to death, you're expecting people to tell a story which will ignite more, like a tiny fuse will ignite more knowledge sharing. So think about storytelling in the old days when nothing was written down, many, many years ago, it was all told around the campfire by stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're doing the right thing, brother.
Well, thanks. So you mentioned somewhere in there, you mentioned plank clearance, and you and I both have spent many years in that FAR, federal acquisition regulation, asset property management effort for government contractors. There's another whole set of rules, under the federal management regulation for federal agencies. But plank clearance is kind of specific to the FAR property management requirements. You got a short version of what plank clearance means, and kind of a little bit about what you've accomplished there.
Well, it's you can't close a contract, a government contract, unless you dispose of everything on the contract or found a home for it, properly transferred it perhaps to another contract, or shipped it back to a customer. But all of the stuff throughout the life of a contract is handled in accordance with the federal acquisition regulation and many other regulations actually, and everything that this can happen throughout the life of the contract when something is not required. But what I have done with it, I've been like the boots on the ground, if you will, for the cases that I've handled, and I've reutilized a lot of property whenever I had the opportunity. I've sold a lot of property once it goes through the main aspect of plant clearance, though, is screening by the owning agency. Let's say the Air Force owned that contract. They were the buying office. Then they need to find a home for their stuff. Hopefully, use it on another program, ship it to an Air Force base or any other military base, any other military service, let's say. And because the property is dollars, money, millions and millions of dollars of stuff that we don't want to scrap it. That's a last resort, to scrap it out. Sometimes you realize that too much gets scrapped, but after the screening's done and they don't want it, say they don't want it, then that's where it ends up. But and then part of that scrap action is demilitarizing it, because it can't stay. If it has defensive characteristics or offensive characteristics, it can't go to a scrapyard like that. And if it's sensitive, if it's ammunition, explosives, and so on and so forth are sensitive, it can't go there either. So we have special things we do for those kinds of things. Another thing is it could have some hazardous characteristics. We don't want that in a landfill. So we go by EPA regulations, local, federal, state, and local environmental regulations. So we need to keep the planet as pristine as possible. So I take that near and dear to my heart.
Sounds like you need to know a lot of stuff to be a property or asset manager, huh?
It'll put you to sleep unless you do. If you do it, it's very exciting, actually. No 2 days are alike. There's always something else that pops up. Yeah.
That's what I found. So I think I saw a question somebody had pop up. I'm not sure I got it quite right, but I think it was along the lines of your experience in team building and working with people across different parts of the organization, whether it's in industry or at the government, and maybe even equity considerations in that. Is there any thoughts you'd like to share? What you've learned?
I call them touch points. Touch point would be like, let's say in my current assignment, a touch point is, I'm the guy that I'm the guy that disposes of things. Okay. I also call it the guy that cleans up at the end of the parade, sweeping at the end of the parade, kind of like what I do. Because during the life, let's say a very sexy jet fighter contract, all the things going on with that, all the publicity. I don't get too much involved with F-35, but that's a good example of a pretty sexy aircraft that's worldwide. Okay, at the end of during the life of that contract or any of the other ones, we're disposing of things. We're sweeping up after the parade, and when the production contract's over, there'll be a lot of sweeping up to do, transferring of items and so on and so forth. But as far as touch points go, like right now, we interface with the government property administrators, okay, which is the audit function. Okay, I'm no longer an auditor, but I know what they do. I've done it on both sides. Okay, so when they tell me that they have an issue with this, that, and the other at a contractor facility, I know what they're talking about, and I know what I need to do to help them. So that's a touch point. The quality assurance reps, the people who check the parts, the new parts, I also use them to. That's a touch point for me to witness demilitarization, to verify inventory, to perform allocability reviews. Allocability being, is it allocable to the contract? in terms of the quantity that they acquired, the technical aspects of the item? Does that part go with that jet aircraft, or was it a part for a toaster? Well, the only one that knows that really is a technical guy, like a quality assurance guy or an industrial specialist. That's another one. So on termination claims, which we have sometimes large termination claims, that's where the government says, hey, stop, I don't need that product anymore. I'm going to pay you a check. So get all this stuff together and get it reported so we can determine your size of your check you're going to get. Okay. Now that goes on a lot. It's more often than you think. But anyway, those parts, that inventory they submit, that equipment, that tooling, all of that is the direct material part of the claim on their proposal. So they're going to have direct material, direct labor that they expended, G&A, profit. They get paid profit on what they had done, right? So there's other overheads that get wrapped in there. So their direct material part of that claim could be substantial. So we have technical people out there that can do that review in terms of allocability. I can do them too. If I can't find somebody to do them, I do them myself. Okay, that's because I've been around. I know what to do. And a lot of plant clearance officers are very good. I'm not the only one. There are some very good people. Matter of fact, right now they've documented from the time I came back to the government in 2010 to now. Compare it real quick. In 2010, there was one guideline. It was maybe 30 pages that talked about everything we did. That's not enough because it didn't drill down to the detail. Okay. So now there's a bunch of different things in great detail that have been written and validated. Matter of fact, I wrote one of them for them, for the government. But I don't like to write too much in my current assignment because my writing days are kind of over. I think I'm kind of taking a sabbatical right now from NPMA, but I agreed to speak because it's you, Jim. You're my buddy.
Good. Well, speaking of writing, we forgot to put a slide on at the beginning, like you asked us to say that to disclose that everything you say today is your personal opinion, and yes, you are not speaking for the United States government or the Department of Defense or any of that. So, lest anybody, have doubt about that.
I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, I try.
I'm sorry we forgot to put that on a slide.
Not a problem. Sometimes I step on my tie because sometimes I don't know when to stop. I just keep going.
Force of nature. Now, speaking of writing, you wrote a book. Can you talk about that? Are you allowed to talk about your book?
Yes, I will talk about it because that's me. Okay. Now, of course, the book has a disclaimer in it, and every article I've ever written since I've been with the government has a disclaimer in it that it's my opinion and only my opinion. Okay. So with that said, the way I wrote the book, I realized I had written, I don't know, maybe 11 articles in my career. Mm-hmm. And if I look for the magazine, for the NPMA magazine, from 2002 or 3 all the way up till 2015 or something, I don't know. But I'd say half of them were during my government assignment and half during when I worked for industry. So I said, well, let me take the government ones and and actually Doug Getz, well, I ran it by Doug Getz, but I said, why don't I take them all, put them in one Word document and kind of move it around and massage it, the document, and then call it a book.
Yeah.
And when I ran the idea across Doug Getz, one of the NES's, NPMA and educational seminars. He goes, well, yeah, you could do that. I mean, why don't you just, well, he gave me the idea of putting them in a Word document all together. He gave me that idea. So I give the doctor credit for that. He did. So I did it. And then he goes, I'd be happy to edit it, if you, and so he made it look pretty. He helped me get the cover on it. And NPMA agreed to publish it. So my donation to them, if they make $1 off of it, it goes back to the nonprofit. So I didn't make a penny. I did it just to contribute something, so I know that people that don't work in flying clearance, it might blow their mind. They might think, God, is that what it's all about? But people that are involved with it, I got a nice compliment from somebody in the government here within the last month, but it took a few years to get the compliment, but I'll take it.
Yeah, that's good. A lot of times you don't have to impact a lot of people to have a big impact. It can make a huge difference. Now, speaking of which, I saw, was it on your LinkedIn profile that in the last 2 years you had been responsible for plane clearance of $1 billion worth of stuff, or was it $2 billion worth of stuff?
It was over $1 billion, a little over $1 billion, but it wasn't in the last 2 years. That happened in 2014, 2015. And
okay.
it was a military, they call them MRAPs, mine resistant vehicles that were, particular one was used in Iraq.
Yeah.
But the government terminated it. They said, stop, finish production. And so it had to be done within 9 months. From the time the government said, stop, we're closing you, because the contractor decided to close their plant once they were told, because that's all that was at that plant. So they had to get out in 9 months. Otherwise, they were going to charge the government money because their stuff was still there. So, and I actually, it wasn't reutilization of over $1 billion. It was, I disposed of over $1 billion. But the sales of proceeds, for example, 1.1 million in sales proceeds on stuff that I sold. But I reutilized so much off that vehicle, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it was several million. I mean, my supervisor, that I don't know if you ever knew her, but Barbara Shepard, what name back, got married. She gave me an award type of thing. They call them QSIs. And she told me that I'm very thankful for that, because she acknowledged me. And she told me that there was only 4 people out of 10,000 people in the DCMA contracts directorate. They got that award.
Wow.
that year. So 4 out of 10,000. And in there, she put that year I reutilized more than all the other plant clearance officers in the world. So that's why I highlighted that in my book. I highlighted that process because that was quite an effort. And matter of fact, that was a perfect example of collaboration with functional areas, because my government PA out there, I say mine, but it was the government PA out there. She did the allocability review. A guy named, I don't know if you know David Wilson. He's a plant clearance officer now. He's here in Texas, and he did helped her with that allocability review. The contractor was amazing. We collaborated so much on preparing the schedules, because the schedules I wanted a certain way. So they created them the way I wanted them. And I basically had 2 buckets. One was claimable. items, non-claimable items. Okay, what's non-claimable? Government furnished, because the government already paid for it and they own it, right? So GFM, GFP, not claimable. But the claimable was going to be part what had to be audited. We had to audit that, see if it was good information that the government would pay. The other thing was some of those vehicles were percentage complete, work in process. So they went from 1% complete all the way up to 100% complete, but they hadn't been bought off by quality because it was terminated. So we had 1%, 3%, 15%. So all of that, all those types were put in buckets and audited to percentage complete. So we check in that allocability, we check the shop paper. So if there's 10 steps to build a vehicle and they got through 5 of them at the time of termination, then that would be 50% complete, 5 out of 10. This in the simplest sense, right? So the people out there that I just mentioned, they check steps on the shop paper for the sampled items. We couldn't do them all because there was hundreds of them, but we sampled it, a statistical sample to say, hey, and then we affirmed at the end, or they did, these are all allocable, technically, physically, and quantitatively allocable. So it was quite a, and thanks for bringing it up. I had forgotten all about it.
Ron, I'm not here to cut you off. I just wanted to say thank you to our attendees who had only bracketed, 30 minutes for our session. And if you have another few minutes, Ron, we would love to keep you on for a little bit of overtime. I'm just going to briefly share my screen here and say another big thank you to our patron sponsors, ABS Quality Evaluations. You can find more about them at abs-qe.com or abs-group.com. And our other patron, Onuma System, and you can find out more at onuma-bim.com. And then to thank our other organizational members, because again, without the support of these members, this program and other functions of the Asset Leadership Network would not be possible. So thank you very much to them. And a quick plug for next Thursday at 4 with Shelley Culbertson of the RAND Corporation at 4 p.m. Eastern, just like today's program. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Jim and Ron.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, this is a good introduction to the complexity of government property management for people that might be involved in other types of asset management. It's an amazingly complex environment to work in. And it takes some years to master it in the way Ron has, and then to optimize the thing. So, quite the career you've had, Ron. But so when you think back on your career, you have some highlights you think about, or anything particularly stand out?
Yeah, one. I had been with Northrop for 1.5 years, and there was our CFO at that electronics division where I was. He took me serious, and I really thank him for that as of today, even. But what he did, I had been there about 1.5 years. He calls me up at my desk and says, "Hey Ron, I'm going to have cake for my directors. Can you come up here at 10 o'clock and have cake with us?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "It's so and so's birthday," who I didn't even know. But I said, "Yeah, I'll be there." So I go there, and of course I walk in there, and when I logged on, when I called in, you were talking about inclusion, I believe, and diversity and inclusion, so on and so forth. Okay, I agree with that, but that's why I'm bringing this up. Hank included me. Okay, he valued me. Okay, and I'm gonna finish telling the story. So I go in, I see his secretary there by his in front of his conference room. So She goes, go on in there. Hank's waiting for you. So I go in and everybody's around the conference table and everything. And he says, hey, you guys know Ron? He goes, hey, attention. Everybody gets everybody's attention. He goes, you guys know Ron? And they go, no. They looked at me like, oh, who's he? And then he says, he puts his arm around me. I barely knew him. I knew he was a big shot, the big shot there. So he puts his arm around me. He goes, you see this guy? This guy's a national resource. They all perk up. They look at me, and he goes, you guys take care of him. Just like that. He didn't have to say anymore. Okay. That was in maybe 1988, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So then in 1999, I was going to interview for a job here in Texas. So they fly me out here. The lady that's going to interview me is the director of the Financial Service Center. So she says, do you know a guy named Mike Nielsen? I says, yeah, I know Mike. He and I used to work together. And she goes, well, he gave you a glowing review. And when do you want to start? I said, they flew me out. I said, I flew all the way here. You don't have any questions you want to ask me? She goes, no, you got the job. So in other words, he included me. He thought outside the box, not like the normal. So, and I appreciate that. So being inclusive, that'll make your organization take off like a missile, because you don't hold somebody back because they're a woman or they're from some other ethnic group than you at all, or other religious group at all. So he had it right, Hank Frankenberg. And then when we bought Grumman in 1994, I forgot that was part of that story too. Northrop bought Grumman. He sends me on the asset review team and to go validate Grumman's assets. So I'm out there and doing all kinds of stuff. He thought that I was a real estate guy too. He says, I need you to sell the Great River facility out in Long Island. He goes, you go over there and look at it and you tell me how you're going to sell it. I thought, man, I'm not a real estate guy. This guy's getting out. He's thinking I know too much. You know what I'm saying? So I asked our pricing guy, this Irish guy named Mike, also not the same Mike, but I says, hey, would you want to be on the team to go sell the Great River facility out there? And he goes, oh yeah. See, his career, to him, that was getting visibility with the main guy who was the senior corporate vice president. So that was a touch point there. So it was all good. Those days are gone though. It's a different place now. When I left Northrop, they had bought 216 companies. It became a serial buyer of companies. Today, I don't know, it's probably 300 or 400. So it's a huge company, and it doesn't look the same. I know because people tell me that are still there.
Well, I appreciate the check I get from Northrop Grumman every month in my retirement account. So.
Oh, nice. That's great. That's great. I get one too. And I still love them. I want to do well.
Mike Bordenaro, I haven't been able to follow the chat. You have a question or two you want to add on before we close down?
Yes, Ron, this has been so good. First question is, can we have you back? We want you as a panelist. We want you to talk about your book, anything. Great insights.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As long as Jim's involved, I'll be happy to. Yeah,
Well, then,
Jim, we're buddies. Yeah, I'll do that. Also have one recommendation for you. I don't know if you ever heard of this lady. Her name's Carla Odell. She's with an organization called APQC. She runs it. I was going to even talk a little bit about APQC, and maybe that's what I'll talk about next time if you don't get Carla or somebody from that group. But that would be excellent if you get one of her or one of her people.
Well, I was going to ask you how to improve equity, and by recommending people like Carla, then I'm changing my question is tell us about Carla Odell and APQC.
Well, APQC is been around since 1977. They have won the Malcolm Baldrige Award several times. They represent several government agencies, several contractors, Northrop Grumman being one of them, Boeing, Lockheed, all the big companies. They are, in terms of quality, in terms of knowledge management, in terms of developing communities of practice, they are tier one. So I'll let them explain more. I got some PowerPoint slides on it and them in the gym, and you can y'all can figure out what you want to do with it. But I definitely recommend them.
Perhaps a panel with you and Carla. You know, this is a chat format and we don't use slides here. This is the storytelling, like you said, but we can set up a program that allows you and Carla and other people to have an interactive discussion.
Yes, very good. I'll participate in that if you can do it. She's also a PhD at Stanford in psychology, business psychology. She's very well educated. So she'd be good.
Nick has posted a link to her profile if anybody online wants to check that out. And then just in general, how to improve equity. We've been taking a formal approach, but it seems like you advocate a personal approach and mentoring people and bringing them up.
That's right.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm doing that right now at my job. I'm training 2 people. I'm mentoring 2 in my current job. So I'm off.
What are some of the things you're doing to mentor them?
Well, I train them and then I shadow them. I back off and shadow them. I let them make the decisions, but I guide them along once they're ready. Now I'm coming up. My wife's wanting to take her mother to the emergency room because she had a medical issue.
Please, all the best to her.
She's wanting me to go drive her over there. So
you should do that. Thank you. You can just hang up right now. I really appreciate your time and all the best to your mother-in-law.
We'll stay in contact through Jim, and I'll do what you guys want, and I'll help.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron. And
Right.
good luck.
Yeah.
Hope everything is fine.
Oh yeah, no. She's got an appointment over there now at the emergency, so she is having trouble breathing, but they need to put her on a machine or something. She's older, you know. She doesn't look 46 like us.
There's that smile. I love that smile.
He's inside, you know what I mean? We're all the little kid that never grew up, you know what I mean?
Just having fun.
Yes, sir. Well, it's been a pleasure, guys. I got to roll.
Okay, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, thank you. Take care.
See you.
And thanks to all of our attendees for sticking with us.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.